Welcome to the Empowered Aging Podcast. Your host is Michelle, a physical therapist passionate about helping older adults stay active, mobile, and independent. Let's dive into today's topic.
Welcome back to the third part of my post-hip replacement recovery series. And it's really not just for people after hip replacement. This truly pertains to everybody, whether you've had a joint replacement or you're just not moving as well as you used to. And so this topic is about my favorite thing, being able to get on and off the floor. To me, this isn't just about falling and recovering from a fall. It's about being independent and active and functional. Because in my opinion, if you're not able to get on and off the floor, whether or not it's pretty, but if you can't do that, then are you really truly functional? Are you really truly independent? Because you're always going to have that bit of reliance on others for that. And like I said, it's not just about falling. It's about other activities too. I hear a lot of stories about people who still enjoy being able to get down into the tub. That's just something they like. They don't like showers. They like to be able to take a bath. Well, to be able to get in and out of that bathtub, you need to be able to essentially get on and off the floor. Now, unless you have, there are bathtub lifts, and that's a good accommodation, and that's fine, but the ability to get up and down is crucial. In relation to that in and out of the tub, I've heard of several people, whether they fell in the tub or they just were getting down and, took a bath and they couldn't get back up. Just recently, I heard of a lady who was stuck for 3 days before her family checked in on her. They just figured she was busy and, she was already independent with other things. And so they didn't worry until 3 days had passed and she was stuck in that tub. So she's now in the hospital where she'll have to stay likely for a few weeks to regain her strength because she didn't eat. She may have had some water to drink if she was drinking from the spigot there, but she was stuck. Muscles degrade during that time. So that's just sad, right? That's just really sad. So it is my mission in life, as I've said many times, that people be able to get on and off the floor. And that ability requires flexibility, requires strength, requires some coordination and balance. So there's a lot to it. It's not just one thing. And I can't give you just, a handful of exercises to do that will make it all better and easy. It kind of really depends on things. And after you've had either a hip replacement or a knee replacement, you then have additional impairments that you have to overcome and get through. So today I want to go through some of the more common ways that people get on and off the floor, because there are several ways of doing it. And even each of those methods has different variations depending on what your abilities are, whether you have some restrictions in your flexibility or your strength or your balance. So there are always ways we can modify each of the different ways. So today I want to show you kind of the basic ones and a few of the modifications that we can do, and also some of the ways that you can work toward being able to do it, regardless of which method you choose. Now, keep in mind as we do these, as I show you these different techniques, nothing's going to work for everybody. And if there's a way that you feel like, okay, that's the way that will probably be easiest for me, but maybe you need some other modifications, please either reach out to me or to a therapist in your area. Hopefully, if you are struggling with this kind of mobility, you are seeking out some assistance, whether it be from a physical therapist or a personal trainer or somebody that knows what they're doing. So with that said, let's get started. One of the most common methods that people use to get off the floor is through this half kneeling position, which is one knee down, one knee up. You might press through without any support except your own knee, or people might pull up from a chair like so. Now, this method is a fine method to use, but I find that some people struggle to get their knee up, particularly if they don't have any furniture around and they're in this position. Because trying to get the knee up when you're already bent over, you've got to really be able to bend that hip and knee. So if you're going to use this technique, I suggest trying to be more upright, holding to something if there's something available so that you can have more open movement to get that knee forward. Another thing I notice is that people will usually be facing the chair as they do this. Now, for some people, that works out fine. You just need a little bit of a lift. You're able to get that foot under and come up. Great. No problem. But unfortunately, some people aren't really that steady on their feet. So when they try to use this technique, they're pushing up and they're not really stable enough or strong enough to get this other leg under. And then they can't let go because they're holding on, so they kind of get stuck here. So there's a little modification I would suggest for people who don't quite have that ability, right? They try to come up and then maybe they're off balance and then they're trying to turn around. They can't let go and they want to be able to sit down. So instead of doing it head on, I would suggest being sideways to the chair. And there are two trains of thought. One is to have the knee closest to the chair be the up leg. Pressing through the chair, I just need to lift this one hip up high enough to get onto the chair. And I press through that back leg as well. And I gotta push and I just need to slide until I have at least one butt cheek on the chair. And then I can slide around and I'm on. So that allows me to get in the chair without fully standing up. Some people actually prefer to have the other knee up for whatever reason, and it kind of maybe helps them push into the chair a little bit more. But you still need to be able to get up, and this other leg kind of needs to raise a little bit so that you can, again, get that one butt cheek up on the chair and then scoot around. Personally, I believe that it's easier to have the knee closer to the chair up, but different strokes for different folks. If the other way works better for you, by all means, do that. You do the method that works for you. Again, pressing and lifting up, and then you're good. And the taller you are, or the lower the seat, the easier it will be. I've taught some people who have such long legs, they don't even have to push up really. They just kind of slide into the chair because they're so tall. Versus someone like me who's a little height impaired, I have to lift up a little more to get in. So that is one of the more common ways of getting in, up off the floor into a chair. So let's talk about some exercises that you could do to make that half kneeling variation easier for you, if that's the method that you choose. So when you're working on being able to get on off the floor, you can't exactly practice getting off the floor if you can't first get onto the floor, right? So I like to work it in reverse. So if I'm going to do the half kneeling position, variation to get up off the floor, then I need to do that in reverse, which would look like this. So I would put my foot back and place my knee down, right? This is the position that I would be in so that I can pull up. So we need to think of that in reverse. Coming up, I'm lifting, bringing that leg forward. So in reverse, I'm going to put that leg back and go down. That may not be so easy when you're first getting started. So first start with just getting comfortable with taking that back step, putting the leg back so that you can lower it. If you're not able to put that foot very far back, that's going to make this part really difficult because your knees are going to have to bend so much more. So it's important that you be able to step back far enough to lower yourself easily, more easily. Generally speaking, we're looking at the length from your knee to your foot. That's how far apart your feet should be. So if you notice, when I go down, my knee is lined up with my other heel. So it's that distance that's going to make this position easier. So again, working on that step back and forward, because that's what needs to come, right? If when you come up off the floor, you're then going to have to step forward. So you need to be comfortable with that movement. And I suggest practicing it with both legs. One will likely be easier than the other, particularly if you've just had a hip replacement or a knee replacement. And when I say just had, I mean, we're not doing this just a couple weeks after, okay, guys? But if that's in your recent history. All right, but regardless, one side will pretty much always be a little easier, but practice both. Because what if you fall and you actually injure one of your legs? And what if it's the stronger leg that hurts then? You need to be able to do it with the other leg. All right, so once you're comfortable with that back step and coming back forward again, we need to start working on the down. So you can start small, holding on to something, think about lowering this back knee toward the floor while keeping yourself relatively upright. You might start with just this little few inches down. That's okay. Notice my front foot is flat, my back leg, my heel is up so that I can go down. If you want a little bit of, security or a target, you could put some sort of pillow, preferably not something that's too wide or your feet won't be able to straddle it well. This tent is actually a yoga bolster, which is really just the right width. So when I go down, I can rest here and come back up. Down and back up. Now I'm pressing through both legs. I'm not relying on just the front leg, also the back leg. When I teach people, when I see them do this method, I find that they often are relying solely on that front leg and not really thinking about the back one. It just kind of hangs out there. But I want you to think about pressing through that back leg, pushing yourself forward onto the front. So both legs are doing the work. Up and down until you can eventually get down to the floor. Now, once you're down on one knee, there's still more to go, right? You need to be able to then get your other knee down. Because remember, ultimately, you're down on the ground, right? So our next step is being able to get a leg up and down.
And as I said earlier, it's easier if your body is upright because there's just more available motion here. So having something to hold on to will make it easier. You'll first might have to kind of swing that leg around if you don't have enough flexibility in your hip and knee. But eventually, hopefully, you can pull it straight through. But regardless, the idea is to get one knee up. All right. Now to further take it down, we need to be able to come down to all fours and back up again. So this requires some core strength, some good hip strength, those glutes and hamstrings. So having that ability, that strength, that balance, the flexibility to come up and down. And then let's not forget the part of actually getting to this position. Now I will say this next section here is actually pretty easy to do in the bed. If you don't have, just a twin size, if you have at least a queen size bed, then you can practice this next part on a bed. Being able to get from your hip, side sitting, up onto all fours. Side sit, all fours. And I would, again, practice this going both ways. This takes, again, strength, balance, flexibility for sure, up and down. And then there's one more thing, right? We need to be able to get all the way down. Pressing up, letting yourself down. And again, this part can be done on the bed. Letting yourself down, pressing up. So then you can get up onto all fours. You can lift a leg. You can press through that leg and stand up. There you have it. I find it better to break the movement down, working on each component until you can get down and then back up. Another method that's commonly used for getting on and off the floor is what I refer to as the downward dog version. And it looks like this. So you might reach your hands down and put your knees down like so. And to come up, it would be just the reverse of tipping back, lifting the knees, shifting my weight back, and coming up. Now, for some of you, you're going to think, oh my God, there's no way I can do that. And that's okay. This doesn't have to be your way. But for some people, they prefer that way. And if that's the way that you would like to kind of go toward, then we can start working toward that with some exercises. There is one reason why I tend to like this method a little bit more than this half kneeling method. When you're in half kneeling here, it requires you to come up, and now you have one foot behind. You need to be strong enough and balanced enough to come up and bring this leg under you. Unless, of course, you have something to hold on to. So if that is a challenge, then doing this down dog version allows your feet to already be together. But it does require you to shift your weight, and your knees don't have to bend this much. You can really stick your butt up in the air and work your way back before you come up. They both have their challenges, their benefits. It's about what works better for your body. So let's talk about some ways that you can prepare for that version or make it easier. So one of the things is, again, we're going backward in the sequence, being able to reach down, floor reaches. So if reaching immediately for the floor is a little scary, start with a chair. Probably pretty easy. I would recommend reaching a little further out so that you have to work on that shifting of your weight. Because remember, when you're down, your knees are going to be down, so your hands can't be right at your feet. You're going to have to shift forward. And then you can start working your way down. It could be a step, a stool, whatever you have that you feel comfortable with that is secure, that won't slide. So if you were doing this in your home, I would want this chair or the cushion, whatever you're using, to be secured against a wall or something that really is too heavy to move. So if I were going to start working toward this cushion, again, I would be stepping back a little bit from it so that I would have room to eventually put my knees down. I'm going to reach and come up. Reaching forward, come up. Now, you may not bend your knees that much right away, and that's okay too. Whatever you can do to start getting used to it. A gradual progression to a lower surface. And then you can start lowering your knees. You see, I actually have to step back so that I can get my knees down and up, down and up. And now notice I have to really shift my weight before I can get up. So it's important to break down that movement to those different components. Being able to reach the floor, being able to shift your weight. Each of those components can be a challenge. Now, another way to practice that is actually from a chair. You can start with reaching forward while you're still seated in a chair. And then as this gets easier, okay, feel pretty good about it. See if you can lift your hips up, shifting your weight onto your hands, and then come back. And you don't have to start with something on the floor. You could start with the kitchen counter in front of you, even a wall. But again, gradually working your way down, because that's what we're working toward, getting on and off the floor. But the idea being that you're working on this weight shifting so that you can eventually come all the way up. So it's a progression. Don't feel like you have to go straight for the big oomph, Work your way down. And if this is just too challenging, even any method, if any of these methods is too challenging for you and you don't quite get the progression of it, please seek out assistance. And so a therapist or a personal trainer can help you get to that point. Now, if you're one of those people who really just cannot tolerate any type of pressure on your knees, there is an option for you. May not be the easiest thing, but at the same time, I don't know that it's a lot harder than the others. It's just different. So I'll show you what that looks like. If I were to get down on the floor without touching with my knees, I would do similar to the downward dog version. I'm putting my hands down, but instead of lowering my feet straight down, I'm actually going to turn, kind of twisting, placing my hip on the floor, and my knees never touched. To come back up, again, cross that leg over, hands down, walk them back, and I'm back up again. That can be tough. So what I recommend is people use an elevated surface like the bolster, or it could be a little stool, something probably a little bit bigger, not too small. And after you've gotten to the point where you feel comfortable coming down this far, do a little side sit onto that higher surface and then come back up. Practicing this maneuver both ways, of course. I would always want you to be able to go both ways as best you can. Again, one way is probably going to be easier than the other way, but practice both ways because you never know what the situation will be. So again, coming up, hands need to kind of walk back a little bit, shifting your weight, and you can come right up. Knees never have to touch the floor. And depending where your hands are, you can be not even as bent. So you see, if I put my hands further out, my hips and knees don't even need to bend that much. I can be more, but it does require a little more walking back and coming up. So again, a different way. It's not for everybody. Neither is the half kneeling method, but there's usually a way that we can make work for everyone. Just may take some tweaks. So those are a few of the most common ways that people would get on and off the floor. Of course, there are always other options. And of course, depending on the situation you're in, if you're out in the yard and you have nothing to hold on to, it's going to take some strategizing there. But, and also being in the bathtub, slip surfaces, it's going to change a little bit on how you're doing it. But at least that gives you some idea of the different variations. And if nothing else, I want you to get out of this the fact that, first off, I would work your way down. Think about the method that you think would work best for you and work on those components, working your way down. And from there, if you're still not quite able to get it, talk to a professional, physical therapist, personal trainer, somebody who knows those different things, those different techniques, and we can help you come up with maybe a modification that you might need. You may have noticed that I was barefooted when I did all of those movements. When you're practicing, I find it better to do that barefooted, assuming you're in a safe environment, nothing's going to hurt you, just because it allows your toes and ankles and all that to move as freely as possible. Some shoes really can restrict the foot movement. So you want to liberate those feet, at least when you're practicing. And then once you kind of get it, then put some shoes on and see if you can do it the same way. You may have to modify, and it'll be a little bit of an eye-opener to realize what those shoes, the difference that shoes can make. So give those a try. Please reach out if you have any questions. Again, please understand, I know that these are going to be difficult for some of you, and you may think you're unable to do them. I guarantee you we can come up with a solution for everybody. Maybe some of you would need a little bit of help, but it's not impossible unless you are completely paralyzed. And even then, I have to say, we can always come up with something. So give it a try. Reach out if you have any questions, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for joining us today. If this episode helped you learn something new, we hope you'll share it with someone who could benefit as well. Until next time, keep moving, stay strong, and take care of your body.